The more you love something, the harder it is to find the words to explain it. But I imprinted on these two books in 2013, and they rewired my emotional DNA. So today we're going to explore why some romance novels leave an emotional blueprint inside you that you'll chase for the rest of your life. Why certain stories don't just entertain us, but permanently shape what we find romantic and heartbreaking and unforgettable, using Thoughtless and Rule as my case studies. So let me take you back in time. Before Kindle Unlimited exploded, before BookTok, there was this weird era of self-published Kindle romances on Amazon. See, kiddos, back in my day, if you wanted to read about smut, you either had to sneak upstairs to the adult romance section of the library, which was full of unrelatable stories about handymen and middle-aged women like rekindling their marriages. Or you had to search for stuff on Fiction Press, which is like the 2010s version of Wattpad, which was hit or miss on quality. But then one day, I realized I could get Amazon gift cards by taking online quizzes through Swagbutt. Okay, so stick with me here. Someone out there has to remember Swagbutt, right? It was like this weird site that you took these impossibly long quizzes, which I took while working like my part-time job, and they would like give you an Amazon gift card, like puny stuff for $1 or $5 sometimes, and it was with those couple dollars that I would go on Amazon and buy ebooks to read on my phone while I was supposed to be working. Discovering self-published romances on Amazon will forever go down in history as one of those things that everyone takes for granted, but was fucking life-changing. No more did I have to scan through library shelves, turn the page to 75% of the way through, see if there was at least kissing to decide if the book was worth my time. It's absolutely criminal to me that YA didn't have any sexy times in it. And before you go blasting me in the comments, I was a teenager. I wanted to read about people my age with the feelings that I have, in the kind of situations that I could only wish I found myself in. If I'm honest, these books changed my brain chemistry, not because of anything they had in particular with the plot, but because they were the first books to give me the kind of spice that I wanted to see. The FMCs, they were in college, but they were still felt young enough that I could imagine myself a couple years down the line. I read a whole lot of romances with my swag books, so there had to be something about these two romances in particular that stood out and made them different. Something that made these MMCs stick in my brain for over a decade over all the others. Do you want to know what that was? Lip rings, tattoos, and flippy Alex Evans hair. Okay. So Rule actually had a mohawk for most of the book, and Kellen doesn't have a lip ring, but his personality is like, you know, he should have had one. Like when you're reading about a guy and you're just like, yep, this man has a lip ring. Emo boys. I'm talking about emo boys. Whiny, hurt, emotionally distant, fuckboys with lip rings. Did I imprint on emo boys, or was there something inside of me that was predispositioned to be attracted to emo boys? The world may never know. If I'm completely honest with you, I couldn't retell you these stories by plot without rereading them, and yet they're still my favorite romance books of all time, which probably gives you a clue in the direction that we're going. Vibes, feelings, and emotional residue is more important than the actual plot themselves. But for the sake of completing a circuit in my brain, I'm going to give you the fastest recitation of these plots. Thoughtless is a 3-book trilogy. Kira moves to Seattle with her long-term boyfriend, Denny, and the two rent a room from local rockstar, Kellen Kyle. As Denny becomes consumed with work and spends weeks away, Kira and Kellen develop a friendship that turns into an attraction. And after Kira and Denny break up over the phone because his job took him far away, Kira and Kellen drunkenly sleep together, only for Denny to return the very next day, having turned down his promotion so that he could stay with Kira. Racked with guilt, Kira doesn't tell Denny what happened, but she secretly keeps falling in love with Kellen. And after months of sexual tension and jealousy and them kind of flirting in the background, they have a full-on affair with amazing sex scenes that, particularly the one in the unlocked coffee shop food truck. If you know, you know. Kira and Kellen know that they're hurting Denny. And they're hurting themselves because Kira won't choose between Kellen and Denny. She wants them both, because this is before Why Choose. Denny, of course, finds out about their relationship and then tries to punch Kellen, but accidentally punches Kira, which puts her in the hospital when Denny breaks up with her. And then because Kira never chose Kellen, their thing is broken off. So Then Kira goes through some bunch of turmoil, Kellen gets her name on his chest, and then she finally picks him, and the next couple books are like them like trying to get over the fact that like they're both cheaters and they have no trust issue, and they have a whole bunch of trust issues. So yeah, that's Thoughtless. Rule is a standalone contemporary romance between college student Shaw, who's a goody two-shoes straight A student, and Rule, a tatted lip-ring tattoo artist emo boy. Shaw has secretly loved Rule for years, but Rule always treated her like shit, or mostly invisible, because he thought that Shaw was with his twin brother, who is now dead. After Shaw gets drunk on her birthday, the two sleep together, and Rule realizes in like this horrible virginity trope thing that Shaw and Remy were never together. Rule gets confused because he has feelings, so he tries dating Shaw, but he struggles to stop flirting and wanting to fuck every woman he comes in contact with, mostly because he has no idea how to be emotionally vulnerable or committed. This will be important later. Underneath the romance is the lingering trauma of Remy's suicide, which was driven by his fear of coming out as gay, and Rule's deep belief that he was never good enough compared to his twin brother. So throughout the book, Rule gradually realizes his fear of intimacy and his self-destructive behaviors come from growing up without feeling loved or accepted for who he was. By the end, he chooses to stop pushing Shaw away and allows himself to believe he deserves love and begins to heal the emotional wounds that have defined his life. With Thoughtless, the emotional core isn't the cheating. It's the gap between desire and responsibility. They are both creating a kind of moral injury by having the pain and the guilt spiral and every choice hurting someone. The tension is drawn out for hundreds of pages, and the moral conflict is the story's engine. It's not something to be fixed. Reviews hate that, this is a cheating romance, but there would be no story if Kira was mature and made a mature decision, which is one of the reasons that I love self-published romances, because traditional published romances love to moralize everything. They avoid the messy moral ambiguity in favor of emotionally responsible characters, whereas Thoughtless embraces immaturity, bad decisions, and painful consequences without apologizing for them. Kellen transforms from an untouchable rock god fantasy into this deeply lonely, emotionally wounded emo boy, whose fears of rejection make him every moment that Kira is not choosing him over Denny, absolutely devastating. But it's also so familiar because Kellen's familial trauma was never being chosen by his parents, so it makes sense. Part of why this book changed my brain chemistry is because the emotional pain and the sexual tension and the flawed characters were visceral, raw, real. Pain sharpens experiences. Our brains are wired to remember painful experiences clearer. I think part of why this romance is like a core memory for me was because it was devastating and horribly painful to watch the characters go through this. Thoughtless became the blueprint for my own stories, like Sell Your Soul and Sell Your Heart especially, not because of the cheating itself, but because the central idea that the deepest romance comes from lovers who hurt each other while also hurting themselves. That is just so visceral and lovely. With Rule was the first book that I ever read that had the male point of view, and I don't think it can be understated how much that adds to a novel. Reading about men with emotions? What sticks out about Rule is not the romance, but seeing this rebel MMC, whose entire personality is rejecting everyone, finally see that that was just a coping mechanism. He's the classic bad boy with the tattoos and the piercings, who's never been accepted by his parents and lives in the shadow of his dead twin. Shaw doesn't fix him so much as become the first person that consistently chooses him, which forces him to confront his feelings that he's just spent his whole life rejecting people before they can reject him. The book is Rule's emotional awakening, and that's what makes the novel so satisfying. It isn't that Rule becomes the perfect boyfriend, but that he slowly becomes vulnerable instead of emotionally isolated. If you took an X-ray of Rule, you'd find the same structure and bones of Sell Your Soul. Most of it was unconscious, and honestly, while I was writing the script for this video, I was almost afraid that people were going to accuse me of writing Rule fan fiction or something, in the same way that 50 Shades of Grey is fan fiction for Twilight. But it has the same narrative arc, the same emotional underpinnings. Rule isn't rebelling for the sake of rebellion. It's a defense mechanism. He's pushing people away before they can reject him. because he believes that if anyone actually knew him deep down inside, they would abandon him like his parents did. And while tattoos and lip rings and sexy rock stars and rebel MMCs are like the outer facade of these books, what really imprinted on me was the idea that, you know, beneath every bad boy is someone who just desperately wants love but has no idea how to receive it. And that's the emotional pattern that I keep returning to in my writing, the belief that romance is less about two people falling in love, but about these wounded people finally learning that they are worthy of love. Which brings me to the conclusion. Romance isn't about wish fulfillment because it's like a healthy relationship. It's wish fulfillment because it makes emotional wounds like visible. We don't love these romances because they're healthy, because they're a good example of a healthy relationship. We love them because they understand emotional pain. Stories become emotional architecture inside of us, and they become part of how we think stories should feel. I think we think that books influence us by giving us our favorite scenes, our favorite tropes, our favorite characters, but the books that stay with us do something so much deeper. They teach us about the emotional journey that feels satisfying. And long after we've forgotten the details, we're still chasing that feeling. It's the chicken or the egg problem. Did these stories give me the emotional blueprint for how I would enjoy romances for the rest of my life? Or did I already have this blueprint inside of me, and these were the first stories that dug into my own emotional wounds and trauma and led to a compelling, fantasy conclusion? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. These books left their deep imprint on me because toxic, messy romances let the characters expose and experience the shame and the longing and the guilt and the fear of abandonment that's deep down inside of them. That's the deep emotions that we're all struggling with. And that's why these stories stayed with us, with me. And whether I realized it or not, writing Sell Your Soul, I had the same emotional skeleton. Not because I wanted to copy these books, but because the way that they talk about the emotional truths, the pain and the wound, and that's part of how I understand and how I enjoy romance books. And why do some books become the blueprint for everything that we love afterwards? I don't know. The books that change us aren't necessarily the best written or the healthy relationships. They're the ones that we discover an emotional truth that our brains just can't stop chasing.
The good girls, they go to heaven, but the bad girls, they get backstage. Oh, the good girls, they go to heaven, but the bad girls